There's one guy in here, and I just asked her because she's really expensive. And I didn't want really expensive, because I'm gonna ask tonight because.
No, I passed.
You don't have
Yeah, because we had questions.
I had questions regarding it. I had some that were associates and had some that were.
Yeah,
Like the one in
yeah.
Owens Farm,
I was gonna say,
but
we
then
don't have a
we
choice.
came
That was
in with
really-
So, I mean, after a year,
Yeah, because I'll need it for the file.
after a
I
year,
don't have to scan it.
you know, you just.
They were about $70,
Got trouble breaking
$75,
copier
$95 more than everybody else. The other ones were right around $200.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My copy.
I think they will
They're not allowed to use
get back
copy
to us
anymore. For the
quicker.
last meeting.
Yeah.
Oh,
The
that could
guy who is
done that
expensive,
Give me
and
files
he's
that have
probably the person in the,
Paperclip person.
Dr. Shank
Save the
explained
file
that,
and
the conference.
Right.
and about everything. I feel like she has
Great, you want to
to
start?
deal with him more than we.
You want me to start? Okay. Tonight we have several things on the agenda for finance. The first of which is a bond refinancing and kind of a state of the district as far as our finance piece is. We are working with a new financial advisor this evening, the F&M Stifel, did I present that? Stiefel, thank you, who is sitting to our left. And I want to thank Ming for bringing them to us tonight. It's been a very refreshing and great conversation that we've been working with them on the position of the district. We have a swap that must be terminated and rolled into basically a fixed bond for the district. And there's a kind of a way to kind of make some money and borrow some money to do some projects that we need to do without impacting on our funds that we currently have in the capital reserve. We do need some decisions from the board to move forward, for some resolutions for the May 11th board meeting. So we've asked them to come tonight to kind of go over the presentation, just a little bit on their background. It's been a real pleasure working with them over the last several weeks. And so I will turn it over. Thank you.
Sure. My name is Mark Quinn. I'm from Stiefel. My industry colleagues are next to me, or PFM. They'll do an introduction for themselves. Both of our firms, my firm, which does the bond underwriting work, we're #1 in the country nationwide for K through 12 school district experience. PFM is a leading financial advisor in the country, #1 in K through 12 and beyond. Interestingly enough, I grew up in Oley Valley. I roamed these these hallways. Grew up playing soccer at the Oley Valley Youth League and lived down at the end of Long Lane for much of my life. My mother unfortunately had to sell her house about 5 years ago because she's getting on in age and she had a lot of property. But this place is very near and dear to my heart. One of the things I wanted to mention before I turn it over to PFM is I think Oley Valley, if you take a look at their last rating report, which was back in 2019, Oley Valley's finances are in great condition. It has an A+ rating from S&P. There's good income in Oley Valley, compared to the nation. There's also a very moderate debt burden to low debt burden. And a lot of that debt pays off very quickly. Meaning that it amortizes, I think within the next 5 to 10 years, I believe.
Very short.
Much of the rest of the county has longer debt amortization. So our firm and Zach's firm were also hired to do Tohohawken area school district's new high school project, which is a very large project up in Tohohawken that you may have read about over the years. And I think, with your debt structure, at some point, if there's a need for a new high school 10, 15 years down the road, that, Oley Valley School District should be very well positioned to put that debt on with hopefully very little impact to residents, once this other debt amortizes. The other things that the rating agency said back in 2019 is that the school district also has very good financial policies and so forth. So I wanted to share that not only with the board, but also with the public to make you guys feel good about yourselves and where you stand as a school district. So the purpose of today is, and Zach and Melissa will go through this in more detail, is to refinance your series of 2012 bonds, provide about $1.5 million of new money or thereabouts. That number can change depending on the needs, and also to terminate that swap that has been outstanding for almost 20 years at this point, a very long time. So parts of the reason for terminating that swap is it de-risks the debt portfolio for the school district. It helps out in terms of reducing the administrative and audit concerns and so forth. And in doing so, it would be in practice with most Pennsylvania school districts. The vast majority of Pennsylvania school districts do not have any swap, involved with them. So, as I said, it really helps to de-risk the debt profile for the school district. So, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Zach and Melissa to do their own introductions and to go through the presentation.
Yeah, well, just to kind of piggyback off that, the timing is very good in order to get rid of the swap too. So we're going to talk about that in a second. But just by way of introduction, so Zach Williard from PFM and Melissa Hughes. So we're an independent financial advisor. So we're different than Stifel, where they're the bond underwriter. We're here to give you independent advice and to make sure that you're making all the right decisions. And so tonight, as Mark said, we're going to talk about getting rid of the swap, because it's a good time to do that. You haven't had a good time to do that in a long time based on where interest rates have been. And then, as we said, there's about $1.5 million for projects that we're going to walk through. So Melissa, do you want to go through page 2?
Certainly. So it's always good to start out with understanding what you have to start with. And page 2 is what we call a debt summary. And so there's a lot of numbers on this page, but how to read this. The top half of the page, this is principal and interest that you owe to the bondholders. And you'll notice there in column 2, that one's kind of in a light tan color, and it says estimated because that's the one that has the swap attached to it. So therefore, that's a current estimate of cash flows. That the actual cash flows will depend on kind of what the swap rates do over time. So the top half of the page is that principal and interest that you owe to bondholders. The bottom half of the page, you notice in column 6, your debt service is level at about 2.6 million. In column 12, it's level at a lower number, about 2.4 million. And that's because on all of your bond issues, you receive what's called state reimbursement. So the state gives you a little bit of money on each payment, okay? So we care most about column 12, the net effect on your budget. So if you're kind of following along, circle column 12. That's the column we care about, and that's what we're going to focus on as we go on to the next pages. So as Mark pointed out initially, you have a really good debt portfolio in that it's very short. And that is good for a couple of reasons. Mostly because it gives you a lot of flexibility. All right, the shorter your debt portfolio is, the more flexible it can be as you're, looking long term, right? We encourage our clients to think long term with all of their planning. And I think what we're going to show you tonight keeps an eye toward that long term planning mindset. Okay. The bottom of the page has a bunch of information on it. I draw your attention to the line that says principal. That's the principal that you owe on each of the bond issues. So you owe just over $21.5 million of principal. You'll notice a line that says call date. We can refinance the 2012 fee. It's prepayable anytime. And it has a little bit of an additional kind of nuance to that call feature, but the part we care about right now is that it's prepayable anytime. Next year in May, you'll have the option to prepay the series of 2017. And in 2027, the series A of 2019. Those 2011 or the 2019 Bs, those have one more payment left. So those are non-callable. You couldn't call those. One thing that's important to know about a call date doesn't say you have to refinance. It says you can refinance. Okay. So if we get to next May and the economics just aren't there, it doesn't make sense to refinance, that's okay. You just keep what you have. We keep monitoring it. Say what's going on in the market, does it make sense at any point in the future? Because just because it doesn't make sense to refinance in May of 2023, doesn't might mean it might not make sense by the time we get to November. We'll continue to monitor that. And sometimes that does happen.
And monitoring the market again is real important for the refinancing, but again, for the swap. So if we flip to the next page, page number 3. So here's a scenario. We went through a number of scenarios with district staff, and this came out to be kind of the best one. Okay, so this is what we want to walk through tonight. At the top, it says it's going to refinance the 2012 bonds and pay off the interest rate swap. There's a partial restructuring involved in order to help minimize how this impacts your budget. Okay, so all those numbers that Melissa was just talking about on the last page, if you look at column 4, that's your net payments that we just showed you on the previous page. Okay, so if you do nothing, column 4 is where you are. Okay? So now what we're going to do in these different columns is we're going to refinance the 2012 B bonds. So that's in columns 5 and 6. Okay, the term is 10 years. We're going to restructure a small portion of it so that when you're done with the refinancing and when you're done paying off the termination of the swap, which right now is about $235,000 is what you need to pay to get out of the swap, you're going to wind up in column 6. And when you compare columns 4 and 6, you'll notice, the payment's actually just about the same. You're not going up as far as your budget goes. You don't have to change your budget in order to do this. That's a very nice feature of this, and it's kind of why it's a good time to do this, because you can get out of the swap and you can keep those payments approximately the same. If you go back a year, or 2 years, or 3 years, when you looked at what the value of the swap termination was, I think at some points it was up over $1 million, which means you would have had to pay $1 million to get out of that. Now, because of the way the market is, you can pay, it's still a lot of money, but it's much lower and affordable, and it's a good time to get out of it.
And as short-term rates rise, which we expect them to do based on what the Federal Reserve has said, and we're seeing rates rise pretty much daily in our market, that termination value goes down. So as short-term rates go up, the termination value goes down. And you can see that in the footnote at the bottom. Even kind of over the course of the last month, as rates have risen, the termination value has fallen about $35,000.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
So through column 6, that's the swap part of this discussion. Okay. So now let's pick up in the blue. When you look at the top of the blue, it says new money, $1.5 million. So this is the additional borrowing that you need in order to, I think, complete some roof and HVAC projects, keeping the same 10-year term. So still trying to keep your debt nice and short. And in column 7, it shows you what the additional payments would be in order to have that $1.5 million for the project. So you're going to have to increase your debt service budget, by about $65,000, a one-time $65,000. So you're going to go from column 4 to column 8 as far as your debt payments go. So your annual payment in the 23 budget was $2.436 million, and now it would be about $2.49 million. Okay, so that's the increase. And you'll have terminated the swap, fixed out the 2012 B bonds, and then you would have the $1.5 million for projects around the district.
And you might say to yourself, well, shouldn't we just draw down our fund balance for $1.5 million? That'd be one way you could do it. Some considerations you should take into consideration are, what about the next time you have a state budget impasse and you need that money for cash flow? Those things happen periodically. What about the next time you have an emergency and you need to fix your boiler or your roof? Those things happen. So those are kind of reasons to have cash on hand generally in any market. And then in the market we're in right now, we're seeing short-term interest rates rise. Long-term interest rates have risen some, but not as dramatically, not as proportionally. So what we have right now is what we call a really flat yield curve, where the rates in year 10 are not that much different than the rates in year 1. It's a good time to be doing a borrowing. Because what we expect to have happen, right, based on what we've heard from the Federal Reserve, is that those short-term rates will continue to rise. So you might lock in a long-term rate of 3 or 3.25, and your short-term rates will rise and you will earn investment earnings on your fund balance, which hopefully you'll take those investment earnings and then have that as a revenue source so that when you're looking at next year's or probably more like the 2024 budget, you know, you have a revenue source there too. That, I mean, you always have interest earnings as line item, but sometimes it's a lot more exciting than other times.
Yeah, it's getting more meaningful again.
Yeah.
So before we flip through off of page 3, is there any questions? This is kind of the main page of the handout.
Yeah, could you please explain swap?
Well,
Yeah.
sure.
So I'll start, that's okay. So a swap is a contract that you entered into with a bank 20 years ago now at this point, where you agree to exchange cash flows based on a certain index, so a certain rate index. That's what a swap is.
So how did it benefit us or how did it not benefit us?
So I don't have all the details of what you did at the time, but essentially what this kind of swap is designed to do is it was designed at the time to lock in a lower fixed interest rate than what was available in the bond market at the time. We call it synthetic fixed rate. That's what this one was designed to do.
And you mean the rate is the interest that the school district pay out?
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
When you say the interest rate, it's that interest you're referring to that the school district pays out, correct?
Well, you pay out and you receive, right?
I'm sorry, part of the other part of the original transaction, and again, we weren't part of that, so we can't tell you why or why you did it. But the district did receive an upfront payment back 20 years ago to the tune of over $1 million.
May have been $1 million or $2 million. And the original swap on this transaction was in 2002. So it's a very old contract that you have. Many school districts that had any types of swaps have already terminated theirs. Because you received that upfront payment, that also made the termination value very high as well. So what we've noticed is back in 2019, looking at the Moody's report, this termination payment was about $1 million at that time. At some points, I think it was even higher than that. So part of what this team has been doing is monitoring that. It is a complex instrument. Swaps are something that most school districts do not engage in. And as I mentioned earlier, it does help to simplify and de-risk the school's debt portfolio. For many of the questions that you're just asking about, right, is these are instruments that most people aren't financial professionals on school boards. You used to have a school board member, Ralph Richards, I believe, who helped out in understanding this. But as time's going by, we've noticed that this termination value has come down, and we understood that the school district had some new money needs, and this was an opportunity to clean up all of those together. And there are some economies in terms of borrowing that $1.5 million, paying off the 2012 bonds, and terminating that swap. And then the school district, once it's terminated, you don't have to speak with us, to your auditors anymore. There's no administrative burdens. And as I said, it does help to somewhat de-risk the school district's debt profile.
Okay, you refer also, thank you, cash on hand. Do we have cash on hand now, how much it is, and what's going to happen to that? You said we were borrowing $1.5 million to have cash on hand. So where do we stand with cash on hand now?
Cash on hand for the project.
Yeah, so those are going to be 4 projects that the district has.
Could you please name them?
Yep, so that would be something the administration
Yeah.
could jump in on here.
We have a whole list of projects that we need to do. We do have capital reserve
money that we have, that we would actually deplete that entire fund with the upgrades that we need to do on HVAC units. We have the window replacements that we've already approved that could be taken out of this money, thus leaving the rest in the capital reserve for emergency purposes. We just have $138,000 that came in today that we have to do in high school brick repointing and concrete work on the building itself. Due to deteriorating concrete and repointing and some of the window sills and things around this building alone. We have to fix the middle school gym units, the auxiliary gym. We've got 3 middle school rooftop units. I've got to replace the middle school chillers. The elementary HVAC coils and 7 units have to be replaced, and we have to upgrade the domestic hot water heater at the elementary. Rough estimates right now, we're running about $1.6 million, which we're sitting in capital reserve, which is shy of $2 million on hand, which would then basically deplete those funds entirely, which would then not do well for the district's bond rating or set them up going forward for emergency use, which would not be good financial move for the district moving forward. This is a way to borrow the money to do the projects, have the money on hand, just as we did when we borrowed the money 3 years ago to do the roofs. The debt service is in great position at low interest rates in order to fold that in with minimal increase. The projects with the increase in the debt service payment would actually come out of the extra 55,000, whatever that difference was, would come out of the buildings and grounds budget, because I would able to move one of the projects that's currently budgeted in the general fund budget against the bond, if the board should so approve that. Thus saving that difference within the general fund. So it's just moving it from one line item to the other. It's not an additional expense within the general fund budget, but it would allow all of those those items to be done, and also then replenish some of the capital reserve money, which then is then invested through Ming and her working with the finance advisors to maximize the interest rates on that 468, so that we can actually start to make money again on investing. Because if you remember, prior to COVID, our interest, we were making over $100,000 a year and just investing our money and moving it and maximizing that, which is really, we were getting almost a 2.5 on interest.
And it looks like that time period will be coming back soon. And the key to that, to what you just said, is that you can borrow this money with minimal impact. And that's because of how advantageous your debt structure is. I mean, it might not look like it to you all because it's, when you look in column 4, it's a big number and it goes out till 2031. But in the grand scheme of kind of school district debt world, this is very short debt structure. Many schools, their debt goes out 20, 25, even 30 years. So if you're going to go borrow any money, you have to kind of layer it right on top of what's already 30-year debt. Here in your situation, we only have to go out 10 years to kind of reach the end of your debt portfolio. And that's why it makes a transaction like this more affordable for the budget.
As Melissa mentioned a little bit earlier, when she was talking about there's long-term interest rates and there's short-term interest rates. The short-term interest rates, as Melissa mentioned earlier, have moved up a lot, whereas the long-term rates, they have moved up, but not as much. So where the school districts typically invest, what I always look at for investment is the 2-year treasury. So the 2-year treasury at one point earlier this year, around January, was very low. I mean, it was like maybe 20, 30 basis points in that range, 0.02, 0.03. It's now 2.5%. Okay, so that's a good proxy for what the school district can invest those funds at going forward as things roll off. So the money that you have available is not restricted. I mean, there are some restrictions. There's permitted investments, but in being able to keep that money to the side, hopefully earn some interest going forward, but also what it does, as Zach alluded to and Dr. Shank alluded to, is your bond rating is the A+. If you deplete all of your funds, the rating agencies, they don't look at that very kindly, because if there is an emergency or something like that, we dealt with some school districts in Southeast PA that had some tornadoes that came by and ripped off roofs, and there are unforeseen things. So
I'm doing a bond issue tomorrow for somebody who had their roof ripped off.
Yeah, exactly. So the rating agencies like to see a cushion, just the same way like when you go to borrow money for your mortgage, they're going to ask you how much money you have in the bank, right? Because if you don't have any money in the bank, but you have good income, that doesn't show really great financial practices either. They want to see that you have, some wiggle room that, if you lose your job or, something unforeseen happens, that you have the ability to still make payments on that mortgage payment.
Right.
And it's the same thing with the bond market and the rate. And that's what helps set the rates. So all these numbers here are preliminary. They're not locked in or anything like that. But it's also contingent upon, what we see as the A+ rating. So the school district has a very good rating, but part of that is also predicated upon what kind of fund balance that you have for emergencies.
Did
So
you?
let me ask you this.
Sure.
We've always, in this district, when I was administrator and on the school board, believe in the rainy day fund. It's just smart. You don't want to ever tap down to zero. It's just ridiculous. But when you look at column 7, you're saying to the board that each year to 2031, the increase in local effort is going to be at around $65,000. That's what you're saying.
So
To get
yes,
to 1.5.
yes, but it's a one-time increase. So when you look at column 8,
Right,
you can see it, the debt service basically runs at 2,490,000, let's
Right.
call it.
right.
So once you get in your budget 2,490,000, then you can put your hands up and you don't really have to do anything. Now, it does tail a little bit higher out in the 28, 29, 30 years. That's just because of the way your old debt is structured. You have that jump up in column 4 regardless of if you do
Right.
this.
Okay.
But the way column 7 looks, it's a little tricky because it almost looks like every year you have to go up
So it's a
65,000.
one-time.
But once you
That's
get
what I
it,
wanna make sure
yeah,
we
once
know.
you get it up, then you're.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Page 3?
Yes, you had the government reimbursements. I believe that was,
Page 2.
yeah, it was a page 2. So how do you know we're getting them? What are they not coming?
That's a good question. So in order to get reimbursements on all the issues, Ming files certain paperwork with the state and then it comes in your next subsidy check. And we could verify with Ming that the district is all caught up to date.
Every year after the debt service, May 15 and August 1st, after debt service payment done, I'll do the report to TDE, said we request a reimbursement for that for twice a year.
Those reimbursements are typically set when you do the new project. So that's not a year to year. Those numbers should not change year to year. So if you were to, the states curtail the amount of reimbursement that they've given to school districts over time. But when you have older projects, there is still legacy reimbursement from the state on that. If you were, and there's all different formulas that are associated with that reimbursement. So if you were to build a new track and stadium, you wouldn't receive any reimbursement for it. If you had a school district that is really growing fast and you needed to add classrooms, back in the day, you would receive additional reimbursement for that. So there was a formula developed, that the state kind of adheres to, but those reimbursements, like if you were to build a brand new school district, your reimbursement, would be very low, if nothing, compared to like about 10 or 15 years ago. So there's less aid coming from the state, but these numbers were set when those original projects were done.
Right. So as long as you file the paperwork, you get the reimbursement.
And the important part to remember is when you refinance the series of 2012, that reimbursement will follow the refinancing. So you're not giving up a reimbursement by refinancing your 2012 bonds.
Right.
So I think that's an important concept.
And also TDE have to prove all those what called refinance bond.
Yeah.
They have to
Right.
prove that. After they prove, then we can submit the reimbursement.
Another one. So we have interest payout, correct?
Yep,
You pay interest
And
on your
we
debt.
have investment interest. Do you know what it is now and where do you see it going? So how much money do we reinvest and how much interest we get versus how much interest we pay out?
Yeah, but I don't have those numbers in front of us. But the interest that you're paying on your debt, that's shown on page 2. So those are your total payments, the principal and the interest. So when you look at column 6 on page 2, That includes both the principal payments and also the interest payments.
And then for the investments, it really depends on, the individual debt, investment portfolio that Old Valley has. So sometimes these bonds have maturity dates. They may buy investments that have maturity dates. So it depends on when those various investments roll off and what the market is at that time to reinvest. So it's a little bit of a different, a difficult thing to quantify going forward. Because if I think any of us had a crystal ball for the interest rate market, we would be printing money somewhere. The consensus is that interest rates are moving up. So that should help out the school district going forward on the investment side. And you'd still be locking in relatively low interest rates now with the refinance.
So the other question, you said it was good income, low burden, and yet we are 2.4 million in debt. And now we also needing 1.5 million to fix things. So where did we go wrong? What happened? Why are we in debt? And what's the biggest burden that we're paying out? What's actually keeping us in debt?
Well, for a school district to have debt, that's pretty normal. I think almost every school district in Pennsylvania has debt. Your debt is considered relatively low. So while when you look at this, you think, well, how can that be low debt? But trust me, it is. And Wall Street sees it the same way, because when you read the rating report, they comment that you have a very moderate debt burden, which is, good in their eyes. Your debt, again, as we said earlier, pays off in 2031, which is a very short amortization. So again, that is, I would say, responsible, it's very responsible debt. A lot of districts, and not that it's irresponsible, but they have much larger debt and it goes out 30 years. You're kind of the opposite of that situation.
In Berks County, Oley Valley is probably in the bottom third in terms of debt outstanding. They all have different amortizations, but it's not uncommon for any public entity, from the U.S. government to water and sewer authorities to counties and so forth to borrow money. The nice thing about school district debt is that usually it's tax exempt. So you're given this gift from the federal government, which is tax exemption. So the people who buy these bonds would not be paying federal taxes on it, but what you receive for that is a lower interest rate. So, I in my career, I don't think I've ever come across, a school district that doesn't have any debt whatsoever, because there's normal maintenance and upkeep and so forth that, everybody needs. Sometimes, I needed a new roof, right? So I borrowed some money for the roof, things kind of happen along those same lines, or an HVAC system like you have here, roofing system. It's not uncommon for school districts to borrow, because if you didn't, what would happen is that, if you needed to do those improvements at school districts without borrowing, what's your only other alternative? To use all your cash, and then if you don't have enough cash, then you got to raise taxes. So the biggest gift that school districts and municipalities have is their ability to borrow very cheaply, meaning at tax exempt rates. So it's a good thing for them, as opposed to the other two alternatives, which is using up all your cash, if you even have enough cash, or B, raising taxes.
Or you do nothing and you just have failing buildings and, roofs that are falling in.
Are you going to be looking at all our finances also for the district finances?
Well, I think right now we're focused mostly on,
just to get rid of that swap,
Yeah, on
kind
the
of
swap.
stabilize us a little bit better.
right.
Because I did the 20-year swap, 2001, 11, 21. So in 2001, we had 16,732 plus and 2,100 students roughly. So which was about 7,771 per student. In 2011, we went 14.7 per student. In 2021, we're almost 23,000. So that's the money that school district gets, or the budgeted versus the students that we have. So, and my question is, how can we use this money wisely, and where do we have the biggest burden that we are still this is more income per student that we're getting. So where we're not doing right.
Well, I mean,
It's
a
not
lot
that
of
they're
that,
not doing anything right.
Well,
And
I'm just
it
looking at
has.
the numbers and I'm trying to
Well,
understand what's
yeah,
going
but you can't look at that numbers in that context. You have to look at contracts, you have to look at special ed needs, you have to look at building costs, there's so many things to look at. And we have to also appreciate the fact that 20 years ago, a board sat down and looked to the future and said, you know what, we want to make sure that in the future, all these other boards that come after us are not tied, their hands aren't tied into 2050 or 2055. In 2031, which these people are right, I don't know of any more than 2 other schools that are lower than ours. And I have checked. We are in great shape. And this swap, it has to go.
Illegally.
Not doubting and swap.
But there's so many things
There's just other
involved
things
in
that we
those
need to-
numbers.
Yeah.
Just because we had a high number of students
Doesn't mean,
that because we dropped the number of students that bill went down.
no.
It just continued to climb.
And in 2001, you only had 2 buildings, not 3 physical
Yeah.
plants.
So it's a tough,
You didn't have the academic programs, and you didn't have the technology.
there's so
You
many
didn't have the
things.
retirement, and you didn't have the medical costs, and you didn't have all the other sort of contract. And the starting teacher salary in 2001 was about $30,000. And you
And then
didn't
you
have
throw retirement, you throw all the other
Given the
costs.
long range stuff,
Yeah,
it's,
it's huge.
you can't take the number of teachers and divide it by the number of students. That's not how it's calculated.
No, you can't, it just,
Gas
Or you
wasn't
just
$5.
answer the thing.
Gas wasn't $5 a gallon.
So maybe it would be a good time to talk about the timeline. So the next page we want to talk about is page 4, and it has a lot of things on here. But we're just going to talk about the things that are in green. Okay. So if you are so inclined, on May the 11th, you could consider what's called a maximum parameters resolution. Okay. And that's where you set out the maximum principal and interest rate in each maturity. So this is a maturity by maturity test for what the borrowing could look like. So for instance, if this borrowing is in aggregate going to be 6.1 million, the parameters will be for something that's higher than that because it has to fit in each maturity.
yeah, the rule of thumb is it's typically 20 to 25% higher than what you actually need to issue in order to pass all the state law tests that you have in Harrisburg.
Because we want to get your debt service level or declining at the end of the day.
Right.
The flexibility to make sure that that can happen at the end of the day. Then we'd go through the credit rating and preliminary official statement process. So we've talked a lot about the credit rating. We'd go get another new credit rating, so another fresh look at the district from Standard & Poor's. And then we could price bonds as early as June the 6th, and we could settle, a couple weeks after that.
And that's when we'd also terminate the swap. We do those kind of all the same time.
Simultaneously, yep. So this is the fastest possible timeline.
Yeah, this is an aggressive timeline. Per the documents, though, the swap documents, it does say that you need to do this on or around a payment date, which happens to be June 15th. So again, the timing is important. It does work here.
Mary,
Thoughts,
Mary,
questions?
what do you think about the timeline?
The timeline, yeah, I think that's a pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good.
The Ming will have a lot of work to do once
Yeah,
we get
it's a
started.
lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we'll,
Yeah. Yes.
we'll help everybody through it and make it as painless as possible.
A lot of work.
Yeah. And they need a lot of like a report and that all.
you can handle it, Nick, right?
Yeah, but we'll save a lot of work because we won't have to do all the pay for the extra audit. We won't have to do what's called the Emmer report anymore, which is a ton of work in December that's due every year. We won't have to deal as much with Standards & Poor's. We won't have to do, there's a lot of back end report we've had to do over the last 10 years
Yeah,
because of.
and right now, every month we pay the swap interest
Right,
every
every
month.
month.
Every month.
And
And
it's variable
also,
rate.
yeah, and also there's another 2 debt service payment to include in that. So totally a year is like a 14 payment.
And I think there's some ongoing administrative expenses that are tied to the swap too, that
Right.
once you get rid of it, you just,
We'll save on that.
so yeah, it's kind of, you do like this upfront headache for 4 weeks and it just,
And then we'll save it on the back.
yeah, then
end.
you can sleep good at night and this will all be over with.
And it'll make the audit easier as well, because we start audit prep in June as well.
And the school also.
And it's budget and yeah, we'll get it done. We live here anyway. So we'll be good. It's May.
But so that would be the kind of the real quick version of all this. So, you know, if you want, we have the sample motion on the next page that would allow the team to get started tomorrow, because in order to come here May 11th with, you know, all the proper documents, the 3 of us and your lawyers, you know, have a lot to do. So that's what the sample motion on the next page is in order to kind of get the team moving.
And this is the standard parameters resolution that we used in 2019. And then talked a little bit with John Stott today as well. He was back on.
And we're doing this tonight?
It's just, I just need a straw vote tonight to say that either 5 member, or Mr. Heckman's not here, I should say, but 5 members are in favor of moving forward with the refinancing of the swap, getting that finally taken care of. Those of you that remember from 2019, when we partially refinanced the swap, we weren't able to do all of it because the penalty was so high. This will take care of that issue. It will clear the books. It will not show up in your state audit again, as it did the last time. It wasn't a finding or anything, but it was a note that was made. It'll clear that. It will keep your capital reserve intact. It will let me allow to finish these projects that we need to do for the HVAC units and get that while maintaining it. It is a switch in the budget from one line item to another, one-time expense moving from one category to another. So it's not an additional expense in the general fund, but it does allow us to finish these HVAC unit pieces. But repeat what pointing at the brick we've been talking about for the last year and a half. We've been doing a little bit of it every year. But the high school in particular is the biggest piece. We did a lot of work at the elementary and middle school last year, but that came in today at 138, which has to be done, whether you do it from the capital reserves or you do it from the bond. If you don't do bricking and sealant work now, you're gonna just water damage. You're gonna pay now or pay later on that. The other bond financing will take care of your blacktop work that you're going to need whenever the township figure out what it's going to do with your busing, Main Street. So that's set up for you. And just for the members that aren't used to bond refinancing, you never want to not have debt as a school district, because once you pull out debt out of the budget, you will never get that back in. The key is to keep it flat as close as you can and to make sure that it stays at that number as kind of a rolling number, but use that for your long-term.
Act 1
changes all that,
in
right?
2006.
And then you kind of keep it like we did the last time. You borrow like what you can use over a 3-year period, and then you kind of pay that and keep it flat and do your work. And then if you remember back to 2012, when credit goes to Mr. Richard, and when we did the long-range planning for the finances and the negative bond rating at that time, the A bond and the B bonds in 2012, and he worked with me to help plan all this out. We went from a negative bond rating to the positive bond rating we have today. That's a credit to him on the work that he did for the district. And that's kind of where we're at now, and it sets you up for the next bond if you choose to refinance that, but it also sets you up with, the high school original building 62 and you have the elementary. If in 15, 20 years from now, you decide you want to rebuild or renovate or anything, you have the money with basically flat debt service. Like that doesn't happen if you're watching what's happening around the county. People are struggling and referendums are like impossible to pass. So the district's position is a financial position in this district is
It
outstanding.
is very strong.
I would like to make the motion.
Oh, yeah, we can.
It's a straw vote, but
That's a straw.
it's just kind of like if
I'm
everybody's
okay.
in favor of moving forward, it's
I'm
just giving
moving
us
forward.
direction to move forward.
With the,
And then we'll
Sample
have
motion.
everything ready and packaged
Yeah.
for you for the 11th then.
Yeah, the formal approval will be on the 11th, just so we
Okay.
know whether.
But we know we can move
prepared.
forward.
Do you have any questions from the community? Well, maybe you were here to hear that.
Yeah, sorry for coming.
Any questions from the board? Any more questions while they're here, the experts?
We appreciate you putting us on
Thank
first.
you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for your time.
We could have held you to 9, I think.
Well, this gets me home to put my kids.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Yep.
Give John Scott was Mayor's February. Cards on, but he's still our lead. Yeah. Yeah, he's the, and then he's our general counsel. We'll handle the bond. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Hey, Mark.
Uh-oh.
No.
No, are you serious?
Student.
Yeah. Mark Quinn.
My kindergarten teacher.
What year Mark, what year did you graduate?
The first year she was teaching.
89.
Thank you.
Take care, thank you.
He used to tell me how many sleeps it was until his birthday. She told me that story.
They are good. They are good.
So you're done.
They are very, very pleased with the financial position, and they have gone through the books and they have gone through the audits, and they are very impressed with the lack of findings and observations, and can't believe our state audits and our local audits have been clean compared to our neighboring school districts. So our position is district. Number 2 on the agenda tonight is the approval of the financial organization depositories for 22-23, according to school code, Topsy and Bisque, BB&T with a scholarship account, the PISLAF, Pennsylvania Local District Asset Fund, PNC, Tompkins Bisque. Did I miss anybody? I know we were moving stuff around. Is that all of them? Yeah. Any questions on banks?
Any questions on the banks? No, we're good.
Okay, number 3 is Delta Dental contract renewal for July 1, 22 to 23. There's no increase in the administrative fee, no change to the contract. We will during 23 or 22-23 school year start to investigate alternative plans for as we talked about last year. With COVID, we really didn't have a lot and a change in business manager to look at other dental plans with OBA, but they're working with us. That'll be one of the focuses for next year. But there's no increase. The plan is what it is.
Good.
Number 4, we need to elect the board treasurer again for a 1-year term for July 1, 22, 23, and bonded annually according to the school code. The previous board treasurer was Mrs. Akin. I guess we put her on as going again. Is there any change to that?
Any change, any comment from any board member? No, no change.
Thank you. In your packet tonight, I did include for you just a little bit of an overview on the, we did finally get with Jackie Westerfer, who is doing a phenomenal job in taking over food service and really helping Ming and I in that whole area and working with Barb Nissel. We were able to put together as we're working on a lot of the 22-23 grant writing, for you the historical data for school, for what we call our percentage of free and reduced lunches. These are for 2021 and 21-22 because lunches are free and breakfasts are free because of COVID regulations. These are what we call direct search. So these are they're all our homeless, all of our foster students, but also students who have families who have applied for other areas of need through what we call direct cert, which is through the state. So they might need SNAP, or they might need they're on medical assistance or other IEP, special education student services, things like that. So currently there's 625 students, 192 eligible students, which is almost 31% of the elementary. Of the 364 students in the middle school, 117 are eligible at 32.1%. This year of the high school, 117 out of the 478, which is 24.4%. And out of the 1467 in the district, this is in-district students, not our cyber students or our out-of-district placements, 426 eligible students on direct certification. At the high school the district numbers at 29. So you'll see that those numbers continue to fluctuate. We are expecting now that food, there will be charges next year, as we're hearing on breakfast and lunches, that those numbers will continue to go up. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a sign of poverty. It just means the students are requiring additional services. So that could be social emotional, it could be mental health. They can qualify through homelessness, foster care, through the criminal system, it could go through the medical system, and also through other services through the state also automatically certifies them for free and reduced lunches. So that kind of gives you an idea of the trends. We took it back to 2005, 2006, and how it fluctuates over the year. Once the district does receive 50%, then all 50% district-wide, free and reduced, then every student in the district would be free, and then you would have to do summer feeding. And that was a federal requirement for that. But these are the numbers that we use when we do a lot of our grant writing to show the different populations in the district when we write for different grants at different buildings or district-wide grants. I just wanted to present that. We usually do it in the fall, but because of how the numbers work, we weren't able to pull everything together. So we got all of the PIMS reporting and all of the state reporting that's done for you. So just an informational.
Thank you for doing that.
Next on your agenda tonight is the number 6 is the lunch fund budget for 22-23. As we said, it is a little, it looks like it's higher than it really is, much increase than it really is. The difference is in the fact that a lot of the stuff that was free under COVID, we now have to pay for again. That's why it looks like it's a $200-some thousand increase. Because all the COVID restrictions are gone. A lot of the free stuff coming out of the federal government is no longer free. So, and then you have the salary increases, and we will be fully staffed because we are going back to more scratch cooking and some other pieces with that as well. So you do have a budget in front of you, kind of the same setup as we normally do, but it's 21-22, you're projected, but I'm going to focus more on the 22-23. When you're looking at your local sources, which is a combination of your daily sales, your a la carte, we will be able to go back to actually selling a la carte sales with students, especially here at the high school and the elementary students who love their chips and popcorn and their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches that aren't made out of wheat are going to love. We should go to make about 120,000. Pre-COVID, we were pulling about 118,000 in just a la carte sales. High school will go back to their soup and salad bar, which the students really like, and we do make a lot of money on those lines. And then catering stuff we don't do a lot with. So that local revenues and sources would be about 454,000. State choices and subsidies and retirement, I mean, it's about 25,000 because most of our employees are no longer district employees. We only have 4. Potentially we'll have 3 with 1 potential retirement coming. Federal sources is 333,000. Your general revenue will be coming in at about 812,226. For expenditures, head cook salary, we have 1 head cook who is a district employee, so it's 31,440. Regular salaries on district employees is the 22,008. Then you have the SOS consulting contract. And if you look at that 50,000, most people are paying for their head cooks or their managers, cafeteria supervisors, the Act 93 positions are in 75 to 100,000, and the districts that still have it in-house. So you're still saving money there. The SOS staffing contract is about 16 other employees district-wide at 218,000. And then their insurance, dental, life, disability, so the net Social Security, net retirement, that is the 4 district employees. Total salary, total benefits, 356,372.
That's 4 out of all the buildings.
Yes, 4, and they're all in the middle school. They kind of stay with Joanne. And then on the back side, you have repairs and maintenance on equipment, which is our general maintenance we do every year, every summer on all of our equipment. Electric, heating, and oil for our kitchens. We do charge, the general fund does charge what's called Fund 51, which is the cafeteria fund for that piece. They do pay for custodial as well. Communication signings, the custodial coverage for the cleaning of the kitchens, and is all charged back against Fund 51, which tries to make the food service as an independent organization outside of the general fund self-sustaining. So then you have your general supplies, your food budget, as you know from the grocery store, food prices are going up, milk prices are going up. Commodities, we're trying to use more and more of our commodities, and we are offering summer training. Been working with Eric Lynch, who is from BCTC. He is the lead chef at East, also Katie Lynch's husband, who has offered to do some culinary classes with our employees this summer, our cafeteria employees, and teaching basic cooking skills and knife, chef, and culinary stuff this summer. We're all excited about that. as we get back more into scratch cooking, supplies, and then hardware, software, our POS system, dues, fees, all that stuff's here. And net expenditures will be 812,226. So we're coming in at a balanced budget on that. You'll see the projected budget right now is looking at a surplus of 119. Auditors will tell you, if you remember back to January when the auditors were here, you need to have 3 months surplus in order to do startup costs for the following year, which is why you're running a surplus. That is good financial practice. On the second sheet, and also number 7 on your agenda, is the lunch prices for next year. We are not recommending any kind of lunch increase. Having been free for 2 years in all 3 buildings, we're not sure exactly. We don't want to increase lunch prices until we get a handle on actually who's buying, who's not buying, and we don't want to add another expense to our parents. So we're just leaving everything flat. And as you can see, we were able to balance the budget on the prices as they are and have been prior to COVID. So we are recommending approval with flat lunch prices at the budget that we presented to you this evening.
Any comments, questions from the board? We're good.
Number 8 on the agenda was the staffing positions, 22-23 discussion, the high school library position, and then it was, I may have gotten confused, Dr. Markley. I was under the impression that I was to set up an interview for the HR position. I was brought to my attention that we were discussing the HR position tonight, so I did not add that to agenda. Sorry, if I was remiss, I apologize.
Just so you can set up a meeting, a discussion with the candidate.
Is it an interview or like more of a, let me just talk and have a conversation?
Talk, conversation, goals, anything the board would like to know, get to meet the candidate. That's what my intention was. It was not a formal interview that we were looking at, unless you want to change that to a form. But I thought we had a candidate, and my goal was to have everyone meet that candidate, talk to that candidate, see if the candidate could talk to us. We could ask some questions.
We can do this for this transfer. We're going to do this for every transfer.
I think we're opening a door and I'm not comfortable. I feel like it's micromanaging. The administration has always handled transfers. She's the one who has to deal with them. The board does not have to deal with them. I think you're opening a door and it will be past practice.
I think meeting is great. I think when you work yourself into the interviewing process, you run into some legal issues, questions that should not be asked. And if people aren't privy to what those questions should be, that creates a whole lot of legal issue, because I've dealt with hiring in our office, and the entire board's not up on how to handle an interview, then that becomes a problem. So I think meeting the person, knowing goals, I think that would be great.
That was my intention.
I think beyond that,
Because we had discussed, Maria had brought up about interviewing for the position, and we said that we didn't want to go in that direction at that time when we discussed that topic. So
I just think that opens some legal doors with interviewing, because, like I said, unless we know how to handle an interview without asking certain questions, that just potentially become a problem. Not that I would love to meet these people. Don't get me wrong.
it's also a transfer to an Act 93 position. That was my point. If it was not an Act 93 position, then they weren't on the administrative Act 93. My point was to share with all the board members the candidate. That was it.
It's not an Act 93 position, correct?
We should not have a Act 93 position.
It's not, it's usually Act
Yeah, on
93.
agenda,
It's the
it
Act
says-
93 benefits. That's what it said, correct?
Why?
Correct. It's
Just to have a benefits package that they match up with.
So it's
Why?
because otherwise you have to do an individual contract.
Right.
And this board has not, just as they did when they hired Ming. Under the law, school code, the business manager, HR, superintendent, and assistant superintendent under the school code cannot be in the Act 93 agreement. So then, unlike the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, who do have to have independent contracts, the business manager and an HR position can either be approved by resolution, set board resolution, saying that their benefit package is per the Act 93. So they get the same vacation days, insurance rates, personal days, insurance, whatever, that an Act 93 person gets. And if that changes, their benefit changes, but they don't. or they sit down and negotiate an independent contract that says they get a totally different benefit package than the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the Act 93, the teachers, the support staff, anybody else. And this board, in my 11 years dealing with previous boards, have always did not want to have independent contracts, too many other than the two they had to have. They had to have support staff, they have to have a teacher's contract, they have to have Act 93 agreement, and then, but they did not want to have individual employees agreements. That's why the business manager does not have an independent contract, which is unique to this district. Because usually business managers have a contract, and Nate's been gracious and hasn't asked for one. Although I think she should have one, but it's my opinion. But that's where the HR either has an independent one or the resolution says where their benefit package comes from. Their salary is set in the motion and their benefit package has to be set by the motion. But under the law, they cannot be in the Act 93 agreement.
So what additional benefits that position will provide that current position does not? For Act
The
93.
HR versus their secretarial position, what more will she get or not get? There's a big change there.
Benefits?
Days off.
Yeah, there's a change, an absolute
And
change.
there's a whole lot of
There's a-
accountability and responsibility.
There's changes of positive and there's changes sick days, there's changes vacation time. But again, she becomes accountable
And
to
responsible.
and responsible for everything that Dr. Schenk would have her do under a job description.
And the legalities of all of that stuff.
So, yes,
So if Deb Hummel's tuition gets
There is a
messed up,
definite
or her certificate, I'm just looking at her because she's sitting in front of me. But if her certificate lapses and Deb says, I need you to fill this paper out, and Deb forgets to fill it out and doesn't send it to PDE, and her certificate lapses and doesn't send her Act 48 hours in, she doesn't lose her job, Deb does. Because that's all part of that, PIMS, the reporting, the salaries, the Tim's reporting, the Act 48, the Act 45, all of that stuff that I now do would all go on to that person. If we illegally hire somebody, if we hire somebody with the clearances that aren't clean, if we illegally hire somebody with an unclean drug test, if we hire somebody without checking references, if we hire illegal, as Dr. Facken pointed out, if he decides to ask somebody what their inappropriate interview questions, or we don't have one of our problems, which I usually put them together for the board here, which was one of my questions I wanted was, I put your interview packets together with your questions so that what the board asks of the candidates is a legal question. Because if you ask an illegal question or stray from the packet and we get sued, and there should be a sign off, which we haven't done, but we should be doing, that says you're not going to deviate from this packet, because if you get sued, you're responsible. And today's labor stuff is big money. If you get an unfair labor practice at the State Department, that she's your lead person. If we're in improvement plans, she's the lead documentation, she's files. That's what all of those pieces that I now do would end up going to this individual. There's a lot of pieces that she does not do now because it is not fair to have that level of accountability and responsibility on a support staff person. She has the knowledge, she has the ability, she has the skills, she has the training, she has all of it. But when it comes down to who makes the decision and who signs the forms and who hits the submit button, that's not fair to an hourly employee to do that. Because if it's wrong, that's me. That has to fall on an administrator. That's not fair to do to a support staff person. Just like we wouldn't do it to a teacher. The administrator has to push that button, even though we would trust them to write it out and make the decision. But when you submit that button, it's got to be followed to the back of an administrator.
Does Act 93 include retirement benefits?
All employees get a retirement benefit.
Everybody gets it.
Well,
Everybody.
the real world would pay for them in 401k.
So I guess the question is, are we gonna have room for meet and greet or not? Seems to be concerned about doing that.
Would you?
I don't see any concern about having a meet and greet.
No.
I don't. I think it's awesome that we greet her as a board. Maybe we can compromise and say, can we at least have her here in the evening when we approve her to say hello? How's that?
Well, we would do that. I mean,
Well, I mean.
like normally, normally when we would hire a administrator, unless they
Well,
had a commitment, we would have them here when they're
If
appointed.
we interviewed 5 people for the position, you would set up questions and we would abide by those questions and we would interview 5 candidates.
Right.
And then we would select the person and we would know who it is, who has such responsibility as you just stated.
Correct.
But I would hope, and I can certainly compromise with my colleagues and say, invite her to come. If she doesn't want to come. But I am in support of the position, in support of her responsibilities, and I'm in support of her continued years of experience and what she's done for our schools. So
we would have to agree that we were going to appoint her before we invite her.
we would have to have a straw vote to have at least 5 people right now
Sitting
to,
here and.
no, that wouldn't be too appropriate. No. That happened
We have to determine that. this
many
is the
years
person
ago.
we
That
want.
happened.
What's the
That happened. one
timeline
time.
here? Are we doing the straw vote tonight or?
Well, I need
in May?
direction. I guess what Ms. Perry, what I would have asked is that if I put her, and I know Mr. Rickman's not present this evening as head of personnel, so I guess it falls to you as personnel, right, Mrs. Jackson? And Dr. Markley is his budget, working together, is that if I have direction from the board to put her on the agenda for approval for May 11th, with the understanding that we have 5 votes, because you need 5 votes to to appoint a teacher under the school code, then I would ask that she be present, just as I would if, Dr. Orr was being appointed as the high school principal or middle school principal again on Wednesday night, he would be present, as he was when we, appointed him. Unless they have a conflict, we would ask the administrators being appointed to be present to say hi, thank you, and do the loop.
A straw vote, please.
So, quick question.
Aaron?
What is she, or is she offloading certain things that we're gonna have to hire a secretary to replace her?
No,
Okay.
no, I got a plan. I always have a plan.
Good, that's good. That's
And
a
if I-
good question, Aaron, because that's what I was under understanding that we were not.
Okay. I
doing
was
that.
a little
If-
confused
She will
earlier.
still be your secretary.
Well, I'm not giving her up.
That's
Uh,
right.
I'm not giving her up. I don't know anybody give Deb up. Would
Because
you
she's
give Deb up?
really double busy.
If Deb was on your building, would you give her up? Like, nobody gives Deb. Everybody wants Deb.
Yeah,
See?
just another question, because I looked around the different school districts. Out of 18 school districts, 9 utilize assistive, that person that also performs HR duty. So what is actually the difference between those people and HR director position that we are talking about? Because like at Hoboken, there was a discussion and they're size-wise just like us. So there was a discussion about having an HR director position and they voted against it. So they actually have an administrative person performing those HR duties. So how does that, is that where we are? So what's the difference?
They hired, basically what Hoboken chose to do is they hired a support staff person that they hired to do basically solely HR functions, who doesn't have the authority or the responsibility to make the decisions, but will do the paperwork with the hope that in a year or 2, that person will develop into an HR person and then they will move into that. According to the superintendents that I spoke with, that was the chart that I sent out to everyone with the positions. And I know that several districts are moving through their budget process as well to add HR positions. And there are few that are moving their support staff. So, and I know we talked about Scocoa Valley's moved theirs already from support staff into an administrative position, none of which are Act 93 because they can't be under the law. And very few are remaining strictly support staff because of the liability associated with it, which is what the chart was that I had sent out last week, I think it was. Hoboken, Conrad Weiser, Brandywine. I know that Mr. Pottinger is fighting to get a true HR director in Brandywine. He's just not been able to move there. He's got a 2-year plan for that. Kutztown is looking to outsource his, Hoboken as well. Muhlenberg is adding an HR person, and his starting salary for HR out of the gates, bachelor's degree only, is 125.
So with the votes for next week?
2 weeks.
Weeks, I'm sorry, 11.
You got 'em.
Don't work for me.
You got 'em.
I think we're good.
So add it and then just have her
Yeah.
Yeah. Take a tour, take a tour,
do the
shake the
gauntlet.
hand.
So just so that I can speak with her again tomorrow, she's not to prepare her interview packet. She's not to have her references. She's
Yeah,
doing
one of
No.
them.
this.
That's not what my intent was.
Just a normal
Yep,
gauntlet run,
yep,
meet and greet.
yep.
11th. And then the other position that was for discussion was high school library gifted teacher.
Okay, you wanna explain all that?
Explain.
What exactly your intent is and what when you mentioned it's actually a savings in money? Just so you all know out there, back in March, when we had this meeting, we had some great people speak about library. And the last thing I said, and I actually checked, was, I'm not saying no, I'm not saying yes. And where it came to pass was it ended up on the agenda. And to be candid and blunt, there was no further discussion. And that's what put me in a situation where I said, wait a minute, what? It's not that I'm for or against. I'm not for or against the candidate. I'm not for or against the position. I wanted further discussion. That's why I had asked for, and it ended up on the agenda. So that put me in a situation where I said, question at the last board meeting, how to get there? And Dr. Shank gave me an answer. And so that's when we got in the situation and we ended up with the number of votes. And that's why we came to tonight. So you know that's the fact. And as a committee and as an elected official, my job, as given to me by this man, was to do the best I can possibly do to hold the line on taxes. And I take that very seriously. And also, when I came here 6 years ago as a board member and 22 years ago as a principal, I was under the impression that board members always communicate and always try and get a discussion that's productive and positive. And that discussion I asked would continue from the March meeting to tonight. And that's the history, the background, and why what happened. And if anybody was upset or hurt or distraught, I'm sorry. That's exactly, there's no hidden, it just was, I was, as chair of budget and finance, I said, wait a minute. You know, that's it, period. So I'd just like you to now explain the position, what this individual will do, and if there is a cost saving.
And then what the other side of that, just so that the public is aware, is as I said at the board meeting, I had the chair of the personnel committee who approached me that this was a personnel motion that he wanted added to the agenda because he understood the importance of getting all the personnel pieces in play because it's a domino. This position transfer would affect other transfers occurring across the district that had to be put on hold. And this position transfer would also affect basically 11 other teaching assignments or section assignments, I should say, here at the high school, let alone domino shifts at the elementary, because if you pull out a 5th grade teacher at the high school could cause other openings and other shifts at the elementary of who goes where, when in the intermediate areas that we need to, he felt very strongly that those shifts needed to occur with ample time for teachers to have those preparation time before they leave on June 8th. Because of so much preparation and work and transferring of not only rooms and materials, but rostering and understanding of what transpires both here at the high school for the master scheduling, but also at the elementary in particular, that he wanted the staffing decisions made before May. and the announcements that he made. So he asked to put it on. So from my standpoint, Dr. Markler, I respect what you're saying, but I felt like I was caught between budget and personnel, and that's.
I hear you, and that's why I
That's
asked you
why-
the question at the board meeting. Let's
Yeah.
go, let's go.
The
All
three nights
have
will
to
come
work
back.
together.
That's it.
So anyway, so this position is a high school library gifted teacher, and as we talked extensively at the last meeting, and the parents that were present, and thank you again for coming this evening, in case it's been a long day. Again, but anyway, is that this position at the high school, the transfer that I'm recommending is actually the person that I was hoping would step up and do the job. Although in some respects, I hate to see her leave the fifth grade classroom because she's phenomenal at what she does. She has the background that we need, not only in the area of the library and developing a media center for STEM integration and making this a community educational hub with a secondary background, but she also is an ELA teacher who understands the necessity of tutoring, of doing resumes, of community outreach. She has been very involved in the business associations stuff over the summer. She's done the community and business there's a whole thing they can do, teachers can get them be involved with over the summer and visiting and working within business and the articulation there. She is very good with gifted. She has worked closely with our elementary gifted teacher, who I think is here tonight somewhere behind the podium, who also highly recommends her to help solidify this whole K-12 continuum to get the high school gifted program back into place with building the whole not only the college component and getting kids ready on that secondary piece, but also the college outreach and the career piece and the internship piece of getting kids exposed to what they not only think they want to do, but also exposure to what they may think they want to do that they really don't want to do before they actually go there. Because we have a whole bunch of kids in the middle that either want to take a gap year or need to be exposed to a career. And no offense to NEOs, but just delivering pizzas every day is not really what they want to do for the rest of their lives. But we need to make sure that they get the exposure to some of our local businesses like Levance, like DECA, even like MedEd Vineman, who they will pay to send you to school. They make big money. Some of these are like, we're really pushing that whole on the Links Expo. There's whole future fairs in the middle school cafeteria, bringing businesses in, starting those articulations, really starting to develop that under not only the mentorship of the librarians at the middle school and the elementary level on the library side of the house and the STEM development side of the house, but also on the gifted K-12, on the ELA side of the tutoring side, on the career development side, on the resume building, on all of those pieces. This individual has the package. Is it all going to show up in September? No, it's a 3-year vision that we have to get all the pieces in place. But does this person have the skill set and the ability and the drive and the community piece? And most importantly, she has not only the backing of the elementary and the middle school teachers, she has been up here and just visiting is because it's a big jump dealing with 10-year-olds to 17-year-olds. Like, it's a different world. I mean, she's here tonight. I mean, you're welcome to speak, because if there's anybody I could pick out of 127 people, it's you. I mean, I remember calling you like, hey, you remember? And you're like, why is Dr. Shea calling me what I do now? Like, you know what I mean? I told you that. You are the one, and I told you I couldn't promise you anything, but if I had somebody who was going to build a vision to take care of these kids, it's you, man. What you've done in 5th grade alone and what I've watched you do in that elementary, even though I haven't gotten there much in the last 5 months because my life is just a crap show these days, but like, you are amazing. Whether you stay in 5th grade and you help Mrs. Conrad in the library and you do the STEM fest, just don't leave the kids at the Valley. Whatever you do, don't leave. Because I know you've been looking. Your future is amazing. And you need to know that. And don't cry, because you'll make me cry. All right? But that's the vision that I have for this program. And I didn't create it just because of Jen. I created, as you know, I created a curricular program. And then I tried to figure out how to pay for it, which I've done in this budget. And the numbers are solid. And the future, as I put together the plan from now till 28, because of the new teacher's contract and all the stuff that we also working on, and how you can pay for it. And then we wrote a lot of grants to help offset the deficit. And then I went looking for the person that I know that can pull this off. And that's why I recommended the transfer of the person I did. And I think when I first talked to you, I was like, I don't know if I can do it, but you were the first person I called. So, and I didn't know she was coming tonight. I was like, she's here. But I just wanted to tell you how it felt because I don't know if I ever get a chance to tell you, but so I just take this opportunity. So. And then, as you know, she's a tenured teacher. She's already been furloughed once, so she's back with us, which has been, very, very grateful for that, and thank the board for bringing her back. Hit those early finance pieces because we did hit that funding cliff in 2013 for all the 12, 13, I think it was, when we are not raising taxes slowly over those early years in that time period, which we've already gone over. But because if she would move up here as a higher salary person than the person that we actually budgeted for, and the elementary replacement is actually cheaper. So you would have an off savings in that line item as well. As far as, we budgeted one number and then it would actually come in, the replacement would come in lower than what we budgeted.
What's the exact number?
What?
The number?
It's just a couple $1,000s. There's not much difference in salaries.
No, I'm talking about jump from the difference between now as a teacher versus the position you're proposing to create.
The teacher.
It's teaching,
It's a teacher.
It's a still teacher.
teacher's position, yes.
You mentioned it would be gifted teacher. Who is a gifted teacher right now? It's high school.
Right now, it's split between two, it's split between two people. It's split between a math teacher who teaches 6 and does gifted 2, and split between a math teacher who teaches 6 and does 2 periods of gifted. As a result of that, those two, we've had to cut back on the number of biology or science classes we can run. We've had to cut back on math classes we've run. You remember at the beginning of the year, there was I believe she was a high school senior. Looking at Mrs. Jackson, because I know you got the call on it. There was a math section we could not run of an upper level math because the teacher was supposed to teach it, ended up not being able to teach it because she had to teach gifted. And then I have to pull 9 teachers out of classes that they should be teaching in order to sit in the library, some of which are special ed, in order to monitor the library, whether it's the tutoring center or whether they're it's not really, the library is not used for science or study hall anymore, but it's the learning center or other BLR virtual classes take place in here for kids that are on a hybrid schedule. Our special ed teachers are in here, so then therefore they're not back in their classroom servicing our at-risk learners in co-teaching, and especially the math and the science areas, which then can be problematic for our regular teachers who don't have that special education support when they need it, especially in the Keystone content classes, which is 9 different periods that we lose for coverages here. So there's a multitude of pieces that do come into play. So we probably lose because of the way gifted is split out. But more importantly, the gifted program is not servicing kids according to the Chapter 16 regulations as we should be. And those students we're doing a real disservice to. Well, the program we have set up now since Mrs. Dundrum has retired is doing a disservice to our students.
What's your plan for the candidate, if approved, regarding the confidentiality when that candidate goes with parents to do the gifted, which is crucial because the amount of time involved, and I know because I was with Elsa when she did all those meetings. Do you have a plan to cover the library when the candidate would be in an office with parents and discussing the GIEP?
Yeah, we would pull from either the study hall coverages. We would pull from, sometimes you end up with doubles there just because of the nature of what periods it falls. That other pieces we would have. And I also do have an informal agreement, which I can formalize if the board chooses to, that in those rare cases in which we do that, they will allow us, because they have been very collaborative district-wide, and like they do now with Mrs. Mummer, that if we have to pull, they will allow a para on a short-term basis to cover the library in those situations. As long as that there's an administrator, across the hall. They will not do it on a everyday, all-day basis because it is a labor law issue. But there is those situations, or if this gifted library person needs to take a field trip to go take students and go visit industry, or they need to go visit BCTC, or they need to go visit, Thaddeus Stevens, or do some of those outreaches, that they will work with us on the coverages here.
And truly, I can't see it because I'm looking at a podium, but truly, whoever you are there, truly, the gift that was huge for me as a principal. I mean, it was either detentions or gifted program. It was either I assigned kids detention, or I went to lunch duty, or I went to Elsa's room. It was almost like every afternoon we did that. But we need this gifted program to really, along with the library, to come back and to really nurture these kids who need help getting these things done. It's crucial. And not that the people that are doing it now didn't do a good job, but they're pulled in so many different directions.
Yeah.
So you have support because I've seen it, and the paperwork and doing the right thing, it's just huge. And just career day, I remember doing career day with Elsa, and it was just, I mean, they're big undertakings. So, and from what I hear from Dr. Shank, you have big shoes, so you can certainly fill them. So,
I
again,
could say, too, I mean, for my family's experience with the gifted program, the biggest thing is having somebody with flexible schedule. Because if you have a teacher who can do it this period and this period, if
absolutely,
that gifted student needs somebody
yes,
and it's fifth period and there's nobody, that for our family was the best thing, that that person was flexible, and whatever that
Huge.
student needed,
yes,
they could go to them and they knew they were available.
that's,
Because I don't, it's not at least for our family, it wasn't as structured as it was in elementary and middle. It was more on a need by need basis.
exactly, and that's why I ask if she needs
Yeah.
to go, or move, or do a trip, or do this, or run down the BCTC, or wherever, that we have that flexibility. So,
How's it structured now with Ms. Roman, and I believe it's elementary school, middle school, right? So, because I know that we have strong gifted program in those schools. So what is the structure there, and how is it going to correspond with high school?
K-8 is a very different, it's more of an enrichment, it's more class-based, it's more of a pull-out. It's very different structure than when you get to high school. High school is a more individualized, it's more post-high school. It's more of it's more about what they're going to need beyond high school and what their career interests are and what their individual needs are. It's not really pursuing different topics, or right now I know Ms. Roman's working with her NASA and some of those other more exploratory topics than it is really based on what the individual needs in order to get to their next stage of life and where they're headed in university and essays and career interests side of it. It's a very different program, K-8, than it needs to be really 9 to post high school. It's really kind of more like 9 through college, that articulation up and gifted. And also 9 through in career piece, because even some of our gifted students are not going on to college anymore. They're either going military, they're going right into the work world. But it doesn't mean that they need to go work at Nia's and deliver pizza. They're still industry based. They need to find the job that will take them to where they need to be, whether that's 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. It's not classroom. And it's also immersion and getting them into the right classes and into the right level of classes, and so that they can get the experiences and the well-rounded experiences that they need, and pushing the dual enrollment and pushing the getting the associate's degree in high schools and getting the college, because you could basically not only get the associate's degree from RAC while you're in high school, but you could also get the associate's degree from the Lancaster College of Health Sciences. While you're in high school, you could actually pick up dual degrees before they ever walk out of here. But it's having the time to have those conversations with a lot of our gifted kids and the kids that may not have the label, but are right on the cusp of that, and having those conversations to plan out what that needs to look like and balance that also with their extracurricular and their co-curricular activities to make sure they're well-rounded in developing that portfolio package, because the universities are not going after just test scores anymore. They're going after who the person is and what have they done for the school and community, as well as their academics, and not just a singular tunnel approach anymore for college placements. It's a very different place, a very different focus.
So it sounds like she's gonna be doing more of what a guidance counselor historically had done.
It's a different focus. One of the problems or I wouldn't say it's a problem, one of the biggest things that we are seeing the district, and Dr. Brosky kind of alluded to it a little bit in his elementary presentation on Wednesday evening. Our academic pieces are very progressive, and our teachers are doing a fantastic job at all 3 schools on the academics and closing the gaps academically. The pieces that we are seeing the most issues on, and I have said it repeatedly, is the fact that the mental health and the social emotional pieces have changed not only with COVID, but prior to COVID. And the kids, the students, whether I'm 7 years old in second grade, or whether I'm 16 in high school, or where I'm in seventh grade, cannot regulate their emotions. They cannot keep their hands to themselves. They have no sense of, I should say, right or wrong, when it comes to how we treat one another. That they are repeating what they see on the internet, social media, what they're watching on YouTube. They have no boundaries. I have kids that have been exposed to in third grade more sexual trauma, emotional trauma, physical abuse, emotional abuse. And I'm not talking like one student in the elementary school, I'm talking like 10 to 15 students in K3 that have had more trauma and abuse, emotional and physical abuse, than most adults will ever experience in their lifetime. Or sitting in their, it's mostly elementary in front of me tonight, so sitting in their classes every day that they're trying to teach, and they are nowhere near ready to learn because their minds are on all of this other stuff.
So in other words, the guidance counselor is more counsel than.
They're actually more school counselors now. We're spending more time and energy on mental health.
Yeah, I've just.
Then be able to sit down and say, okay, let's work on your college essay today, or let's work on this,
Right.
because they're stretched so thin. I can tell you in the last month, I've had 4 suicide attempts, kids hospitalized for suicide attempts. So, and that's only at the high school alone. That's not even middle school and elementary. So the whole tenor of what's happening across the district has changed dramatically over the last 3.5 months. And I know we're seeing it more in the elementary, like kids that they just lose it for no reason, and then they really don't know why. And there's no, even the parents will say, we don't know why they're melting down. We don't know why they're so emotional. We don't know why they're so angry. And it's not that the kids are like, there's no trigger. If we can't find the trigger. Even after Easter, we're hoping that they would settle. And there are some kids that we sent home, and by Tuesday, we were really kind of hoping we didn't have the week off, because we weren't sure if they were coming back. As much as we all wanted to be off all week, because we needed to be off all week, was like, should we have done called all snow days and made it up, because there were kids we were afraid. That's our world.
How many guidance counselors do we have now?
2 in the elementary, 2 in the middle school, 3 in the high school.
And so that's going to be 4 in high school then?
No,
No,
No.
guidance counselor.
Okay, but the job description seems like to be what the guidance counselor should be.
No, that's, you just explained the big difference between them now.
Do our
It's
guidance
shifting, it's shifting.
do our guidance counselors also have psychological degree in psychology?
They have a degree in school counseling.
Have we considered to outsource? Because if we have
You
more.
have a school psychologist.
I have 3 school psychologists. I have 4 PCBAs. I have 2 progressions, full-time individual counselors. Got 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 school counselors. We've got 3.5 full-time nurses. Got a crisis counselor on standby, most of which I find by grants. Because we don't,
So the resources are there.
the resources are all there. It's just the need is growing faster than our resources. 2 trauma-informed classrooms that are filled, which is all trauma, students with trauma, not behavior, not drug and alcohol. They're all trauma. And then I have what we call, which is Beth Good from the IU, who's full-time with us now, who is really another Mia Beach, who is spends all her time at the elementary just assisting with behavior and assisting teachers working with our most difficult students. I would say, and they're shaking their heads. So I'm been down in the primary wing for a while, but just, what's the toolbox? How can I help this child? How can I try this, try that, as well as paperwork, but just another administrative resource to do what we can to help these students. And then the sensory rooms, OT, PT, speech, all of the other sort of stuff.
Is that answer your question?
Well, yes, so basically it seems like we have the resources and now we are using counseling resources to help out psychological resources too. So the guidance counselors are doing more of what the psychologists would have been doing.
No, I don't think she said that.
no.
Well, you just said that we have more crisis now, that the guidance counselors spending more time in it, addressing all this emotional needs and everything else,
Yeah,
rather
she's-
than working in the careers.
I mean, she's really just answering Mr. Keller's question about, it used to be guidance was more involved with this, with the.
Well, the
gifted
guidance,
players.
they were a guidance counselor.
So we were
Which,
that.
which seems like school, right.
Right.
They're
It's a
more-
shift. And now
It's a
gifted
shift.
is
That's
shifted
what
over to
I'm-
being
that's what I
almost
was-
as, a teacher in itself.
Clarify.
Gifted. A gifted teacher now. That's, I'm trying to get us back on track as to what we're talking about tonight is the high school librarian / gifted teacher.
So, and then the other thing, Dr. Markley, as you will recall, that if we can get kids into classrooms, even if it's our upper level kids and they're taking an AP Calculus B, and we can get 5 kids in AP Cal versus sitting in study hall, we get teachers teaching versus 70 kids in study hall, which will help on the back end too.
It's huge. It's a huge position and it's a needed position. Okay. And the change that I can say to you, Maria, is at one point, this high school had 700 kids with 2 counselors. And I had enough time with those 2 counselors to have them cover duties. This is a different world we're in. Even at 200 kids less right now, at 500 kids in the high school, those counselors I know are buried every day, minute to minute to minute, all day long, and sometimes don't even get a lunch. They're running from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And honestly, to have that gifted support and to have somebody that truly cares about the kids that need to get an answer, as Mrs. Jackson just said, they may not be able to get to that counselor, but now they can at least get to a gifted teacher who they can trust and talk to about an issue that may relate to a career or something that needs to be done during that moment. And it's nice that they would be in the library when they can go in and actually see that person.
The concern that came from the parents is how that particular person is going to help current students that falling through the cracks to apply for their jobs, write their applications. I understand Dr. Shank mentioned the 3-year process, and parents are asking what is going to happen now because they're losing their kids now. So how is that going to be addressed?
It's all part of the plan, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I'm going to give you every answer you want tonight, because no matter what I say, it's not going to, you're going to find fault with it. But until I know whether I have a position, I'm not going to be sit down with the people involved, with the person who's being transferred and the people that are affected by it, and the high school principal and the guidance department and the current gifted teachers and everybody else, and be able to lay out who's going to do what, including the English teachers that do a lot of the resume writing and do the cover letter writing and all the rest of it, and lay it out. I mean, right now we're in survival mode. At all 3 buildings, we are in survival mode. I mean, we start PSSAs tomorrow. We get kids losing their minds, we got parents losing their minds. We are just trying to make sure everybody is healthy and they're fed and they are safe. And that some of them we sent home today, I'm hoping that I don't get a call in the middle of the night. And that is where we are. And that's not just students, that is our parents. And then we've got staff as well. So yes, we will have a plan and we will start to address it and it will evolve. But you can't fix in public education, unlike private school, unlike charter school, unlike cyber school, public education cannot fix every issue overnight. And parents need to, like Mr. Keller said, earlier at one of our meetings, parents do need to be involved as well. And some of it does come back to parents. And if they have a question, they need to call. They need help, they need to call or email or Schoology. And we will make time, but you can't always we're not going to reach every student on every day. But we will get to them and we will figure out how to get it done. But if I don't have a position, then I don't know what I'm working with. But right now we have bigger issues and bigger concerns than just worrying about somebody getting a job tomorrow.
Okay, we move on. We got a lot to cover yet tonight, folks. So I guess what we're asking is a straw vote here. Is everybody okay with this position being added?
So I abstained the other night. How do I handle this as far as
You've got a conflict.
just because of conflict of interest?
You abstained the other night, you probably would.
Yeah, I mean, can I add something to the position? I mean, I see tremendous value. I understand, pinching pennies and handling budget and that's what makes these decisions tough. But I see the value in that position, and the person who's up for that position would really tremendously benefit the kids. I mean, really from a, not from that financial situation, but really, I think it, I just think there's tremendous value there. So that's my 2 cents, but I am still going to abstain, sorry.
Do we have the five?
Yeah,
Well, I know Mr. Heckman's gonna vote.
I'm all
because I'm
for it. I
all
mean,
for it, so I think
it
I think
seems
we're-
like
we got.
it's for the kids, period,
It is.
as far as I can tell. So,
There we are.
Hey,
Thank God we got our contract because everybody pumping her up tonight. She asked for a hell of a lot more money.
No, sorry.
So,
We're good on that.
so add it.
Yes.
Add it, yeah.
Are you still want it?
Don't ask that.
Congratulations.
Yay.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
22-23 budget, gave you the short version so we don't get lost in my colors. Not a lot of changes. This is in its final form. So in the real estate, under number 4, the 499 mills, as of today, assessment value is in that number. That may change a little bit between now and May 1st. We don't, because we use whatever the assessment is on the last quarter that's coming in. Hopefully it goes up and not down. Most of the rest of it is coming in as the same. As you saw with your financial advisors tonight, if you look at number 12 on the list, you have $10,000 in earnings from investments. If you go back to 2019-20 budget, that number was over $125,000. So that's why we're saying that as you continue to move forward, investments on an earnings, and that is just district money. So that will continue to go back up again, and you can pick up 110,000 over the next several years in just interest in what you have sitting in your reserves. Athletic fees, dues and fees, revenue, IDA, all of that stuff for your local sources, you're looking at 24,507,816. Basic ed subsidy, we're still sitting at 50% of the governor's budget. There has been no movement, although we're still hearing that he's still not going to come through with what the original numbers were. If anything changes there, then we'll let you know. Going into May and the finalization of the 2028, same thing with special ed. That doesn't come close to what we spend in that. Transportation subsidy is down because you have to remember that we also, with COVID, we did not transport the number of students that we used to transport, and we also had to cut buses because we don't have drivers, which then affects your numbers. So your transportation subsidy is down a little over $190,000 on those two factors. So then that's come down about 806 from about 990. That's one of the biggest change on the revenue side from last month, presentation. Health Subsidy Act is what it is. That's all your stuff that goes on in your health, the nurses' offices, property tax that'll get certified. That's your slot money. That should come in higher because if you saw the March casino revenues, they have been the highest they ever have been since they legalized gambling in Pennsylvania. So we're hoping that'll come in, which is more money back to the taxpayers and the reduction on your bills. County to the graph, FICA, PSERS, all of that stuff. So your state sources are coming in at 10.5. Federal grants coming in, Title I, 2, 4, and medical assistance is coming in at 459,530. So local revenue right now is, or total revenue 35,538, 286. The expenditure side, salaries, benefits, not a lot of changes. We have built in all of the column movement for teachers that we know of as of today. Deb and Ming have done a great job trying to forecast that out. The administrative side and severances are in that number. That does include the HR position is in there, so that has been moved. Support staff is down from that as we've moved things around. And some people who have retired came out, and that's where you'll see a little bit of increase in the SOS a little later because they came out of one line item into another, but it also affected your FICA and your PSERS. Support staff overtime is down, co-curricular, OBA, that's the ESY $19 an hour stuff. Most of that is the same. Made the adjustment on the medical at the 1.5 is locked in versus the 4%. So there's some saving on medical. FICA, PSERS, tuition reimbursement, all the same. Looking at salaries and benefits at 22.5. Buildings and grounds at 1.5. We will, and then technology and transportation. We took the tuition, the teacher out of tuition on our schools for the elementary, so they have their extra special ed teacher. Didn't know if you knew that or not out there. And then reg ed, special ed, made some adjustments to these numbers based on projections for this year, and then who's coming back. So there's some, I won't get into all that, because really don't need to know. But anyway, some savings in there, business office, board services, SOS is a little bit up, but as you saw earlier, the district side of the house is down on support staff, which is the savings because we don't pay FICA, we don't pay retirement, we don't pay healthcare, we don't pay dental, we don't pay workman's comp. So there is a savings on that as well. So then your total building budgets are in there as well. Total expenditures, 36,174. So you're looking at a 499 mills, sitting with a 635, 768 from the fund balance, and you're balanced.
And this has all the positions in it.
Yes, everything is in it. That's where you are, totally built with all the positions in it.
Anybody have any questions?
Comments, concerns? Number too low, number too high? What do you want to do? No, I know that.
Just so Dr. Murphy asked, I didn't want to confuse it with tonight because we had enough other stuff too, but I am finishing the long range projections, which I do every year for the audit anyway. We'll take you out to 2028, building in the remaining, just for board's information for the future, do with it what you want. But basically it builds in the administrative positions that theoretically you will need into the year in which they belong. And really doesn't, and with the retirements that I also know that are coming out for like a teachers and the administrator side, just so that you will see that basically you're looking at to balance the budgets going out. If you stay, theoretically, if you stay within that point, 4.6 to 5.59 range, you will be able to get the remaining administrative positions back to lighten the load on whoever you hire next. Teacher-wise staffing, unless something goes crazy with, special ed numbers and caseloads, you basically are done. Minus attrition. If somebody retires, replace somebody, you have savings. So that last 4 positions you have for the administrative side of the house, which is the 2 superintendent, the assistant superintendent, the assistant business manager, and facilities or facilities operations, transportation person are the last 4, and they are staged. And millage wise and fund balance, if now that you did the 1.5, you will be set, and millage wise, that's your range. And you will
Just
be,
so we're all hearing what you just said.
I have it out.
You have it set up so
If
if
you follow.
we follow through with like 0.499, we should be in that
At 5,
in that ballpark.
You stay in that 4.9 to 6 range,
We
0.6
can
range,
do what we need to do
and be healthy.
and be healthy with the swap that we just talked about and
Yeah.
everything else.
And not blow your funds, as long as you don't do anything stupid. And
Well, so we don't.
I mean, you'll get requests but
Then we can do nothing stupid.
they won't do anything stupid. No, I mean, because your investments are gonna go back up, the way we have things set up. I have the teacher's contract almost done, which you'll have to finish because I can't, do that. LVA has been phenomenal to work with. I'm doing that. Transportation contract is almost done for you guys to finish. So, I mean, and for what we know, I mean, as of today, minus, craziness, financially, you are in a really good position. Technology's in a good position. Materials, I mean, you'll have the new science standards, which are absolutely crazy. I love them, but they're going to be as crazy for people as the math were when they changed, because they're all about not having the answers. They're all about process. That's your biggest expense that's coming. Elementary math has to be done, but that's all budgeted and ready to go. So, I mean, the biggest piece is just let the professionals be the professionals and let them go. Let them teach, let them do their thing, take care of kids.
Dr. Shank, do you have the mills in front of you?
I do in one of my pages, yeah.
Okay, let's just say for just a brief discussion. Yeah, thank you. You're awesome. Yeah. Because of the situation that many families are in right now, which is difficult with funds and everything that's happening. I would just ask this board, respectfully, I would ask you and Dr. Schenk, if there's any way that we could take that a little bit lower at this point because of the difficulty that people are facing right now. I'm just asking you. I mean, I'm not asking you to take it, I'm just asking if we could take it down just a little bit. I mean, and that's all I'm saying. But 499, if we can even get it down to like 465, and it's not a lot, but it helps a little bit for people. So I'm just throwing it out. I certainly don't want to go high, but if there's any way that we could get that down just a little, because we were at 499 last year, right?
We've been trying to stay at
We've been
499.
trying to stay there, and I understand that, but is there any possibility of what? Because I know we have to do this, and we have to get this through soon, so I'm just asking the question, that's all.
Problem with that is it looks good for 1 year, but even
I
that,
know.
that 469 that you just, or 465 you just talked about,
Yeah,
in 3 years, that's a teacher. Because it's reoccurring revenue and that deficit adds
I
up
hear
to,
you.
that pays for, that revenue pays for a teacher position. And that's what happened in 2012 when the board directed me to lay off 7 teachers and 8 support staff. And the community wanted to hang me from the flagpole because there were all the years that, and at the time, the board did what they thought was best. And I'm not judging them for what they did, but they didn't raise taxes at all. And then all of a sudden that funding cliff came and we had over a $4 million deficit. Then I had to furlough all those teachers and then I had to move all those people around. And then Mrs. Ecken wanted to run me over in the parking lot. Miss Perry wanted to run me over in the parking lot because I had to move all those people around and the elementary was crying in the hallway. I mean, you remember?
I
It
remember.
wasn't fun. But we had no money and I don't want to ever have anybody to do that. And $80,000 in 3 years and just, what is basically a few dollars and
I'm good with 499.
is adds up over time because that is money lost
So
forever.
percent raises, we're at what for these people coming up?
Percent for admin and sports staff is 3%.
3%.
And we're still, and running the county averages every year, we're still under the county average for administrators and way under for support staff.
There you have it.
Now, can I ask? I think it looks good not going up and just staying the same. I think that's looks almost as good as if we could even lower it, like yours. I mean, obviously it's better if we can lower it, but it doesn't look bad at all. Leave it the same. But you just said about the raise. Not saying they're not worth getting a raise, but are other people getting raised in the world at that rate?
Schools?
At that rate, I'm talking about out of school. Talking about the people he's trying to protect, trying to lower them. Are they getting 3% rate?
I'm
talking about outside of school.
Because
You don't understand what I'm saying. Like
No, I understand what you're saying.
I've gone many years and I can't count without getting a raise. Period.
Right.
And my health insurance going up, everything else going up, and I've not gotten a raise. Now, that's my fault perhaps. Okay, but that was across the board in the industry that I'm in, okay?
Our industry, we do. And ours are low, 3% is low. Admin raises
Well,
right now are 4 to 6.
3% is a lot when you look at the wage, though.
No, admin raises right now are going 4 to 6. That's the minimum right now. 3 is actually low.
I know the business I'm in, I got an engineering firm, and just to try and compete with the other firms who are trying to poach our people, we're giving them 5 to 7% right now for the end of the year.
All right,
Just to
there's
keep-
that, there is always that.
But and I'm finding that's rippling across all the industries right now. It's tough. Kids coming out of school are getting 10% more than they were getting last year. It's again, I'm in an industry that has very STEM is killing us right now in this country, and we have nobody's graduate engineers. And to try and get them, the kids from the Philadelphia schools to come downtown and work for us is impossible. So I just know when you talk about 3% raise, I'm like, I wish I could only get away with a 3% raise in some of these places. But again, you're right on the matrix and stuff. It does, if you add that, it can
Okay, I mean, I just,
To answer your question,
Doesn't hurt to
people,
ask.
I mean, everybody right now I know every industry I'm familiar with is getting bumped. And that's why it's hard to trying to hire people right now.
So how much historically have we been giving raises?
Our raises are tied to usually our raises for support staff and administrators. The difference is the support staff averages 3%. Theirs are based satisfactory or unsatisfactory. Admin raises are merit-based. They average 3%. Some get a little bit more for merit, some are less. The 3% is tied to the average of the teacher contract. So the teacher this last contract we're in now, their average across the 4 years of the contract is a 3%. Some years were higher, some years were a little bit lower, but the average was agreed to by the board was a 3%. That's where the base percentage comes from for admin. Prior to that, it was a little lower. Right now, teacher contracts are settling at anywhere. I think Easton's just came in at, I think 4.5 to 6. Donegal just settled at 4.5 to 6.5%. Somebody else in Lancaster came in at an average of 5 over a 4-year period. That's what they're going. So that's where the percentages come from, and administrators are based on performance. So some get a little less than the 3, some get a little bit more than the 3, based on the job that they do every year and the goals that they have and the goals that they meet. And then some are based on the county averages that we look at. Some are under the average, as far as where everybody else is with, and that leaves out, we don't, average Reading into that, of course, but, and then looking at, years of that they've been in the position as well. And some are, at the average and some are under the average for our administrators.
So the basically average taxpayer in Oley School District paid about at 1 to 2% in their salary increase, and they're paying out 3 to 3.5 in their taxes. Okay.
I can't answer to
Can't say that.
100%. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
I'm not sure about that. But I can say this, in the Act 93, in past history, there was a common number, like 2%. And then that, like Dr. Schenk said, on that common number, COLA wasn't looked at, other things were looked at, and also merit was looked at. So
Right.
the thing that's nice is when you're in a position for a long period of time, say 10 years, and you've gotten 3% each year, that certainly helps when you stay in your position. The problem is most administrators don't stay. We have a unique feature in Dr. Schenk. She stayed. You had a unique feature in me. I stayed because we loved community. We loved what we did, even though we had, crappy days. We stayed because we love it. Okay, and the thing is now you see so many people in these positions that are 2 years and gone, 2 years and gone. And they just do that, and they do that because of money, or they go to a different state because of health insurance. So it's great to have people that stay. But Mr. Keller, I hear you, and I've heard more people. Yeah, it's cost,
more than anything.
but it's also important that we remember there's going to be next year, and we have to be ready for that year, and there's going to be the next year, and we have to be ready for that year. My point was that this year especially, it's been tough. I've heard more from people this year about situations than I've ever heard before. And that's the only reason I brought it up. I'm then bringing it up because I'm promoting anything. I'm just trying to say, if we can help, we help. If we can't help.
There's a lot of elderly people concerned about losing their houses.
So.
And also our teacher to student ratio is 11.7, which is one of the, probably the lowest in Berks County. Overall, not particular in any school. No, it's not.
But you got to be careful when you look at that number, because you have also different
It's just
curriculum.
the average, yeah.
Yeah, you have different curriculum areas where we have teachers in front of 25, 26 kids in certain periods during the day. So you can't, that average is.
Yeah, that's, and I'm sure the other schools also have their own.
They do that number.
Yeah, that's not how you factor it.
Are we in agreement with where we're at? Okay. And if the governor would happen to send us another, $250 million, you'll keep us posted,
Oh,
correct?
yeah. I mean, if anything changes, it comes back up again and 2028 goes May 11th and then it sits for 30 days publicly. And then we have one last look at it in June before the 15th anyway. Then it could be a balance, or you may be able to drop it a little bit and then pull that fund balance back, because if you save the fund balance and something does go awry, then you have that safety net down the road.
Yeah, exactly.
Because right now, you don't want to blow that safety net too much going forward.
Runner or community, any comments you'd like to share since you're here? Mr. Rohr, doctor,
We have to stay tomorrow ready.
you better get some rest.
You're exactly right.
Get some rest.
Like a
Okay.
little kid.
You know, executive session.
Before we,
breakfast.
You can breakfast.
Protein.
Get a good breakfast.
Protein.
Before we leave, can we talk about, just a second, and I have a question to ask. I was concerned about the gentleman that was here the other night, and the question I want to ask is, I realize there are speed limits in the elementary school. Are there speed limits in the high school?
We didn't, but
Speed limits, signs, yes.
we don't, because they don't mean anything. So I didn't spend the money on it because the police have told us, and the chief said too, we can't enforce it anyway. So it is, they
You
have,
can't enforce it.
no, because it's private property and you have to have a radar gun. And you could drive, so it doesn't matter what speed you drive through it, we can't arrest them anyway, and you can't find them. So you could have 10 miles an hour, you could have 5 miles an hour, and we could spend a lot of money putting signs in or rolling stop signs, and you could roll right through it and it doesn't matter.
I guess the question is, does it act as a deterrent?
No,
No. Well, is it deterrent
How do we
then
know?
when Dr. Markley stood out there every day? Was that a deterrent, Dr. Markley?
Well, yes, it was, but I also, I lost a leg every so often.
but
But.
Yes, but I would say,
Do we have anybody?
yeah,
yeah, we have people,
We have people out
out
there.
there. We-
Okay,
it's better.
so in other words, the things he was saying were not exactly factual.
correct.
Okay, I felt sorry for him because I really feel the gentleman has some mental problems
It's all,
I would have no problem with talking through policy or P and T about putting a couple signs up, that say
Yeah, I was
15
thinking
miles an hour.
Two on the way in,
You
two
know,
on,
yeah.
or at each end of the thing, I was.
I
just
mean,
gonna say
at
the same
least
thing.
if we had the signs there
There's-
and
I'll
something
donate a
happened,
sign.
we could say, there are
No,
signs
no,
there.
I agree with
I will go with
Yeah.
Dr. Facken, I'll donate one.
Yeah, I would.
see, we took them down because they were shooting holes in them. And they were taking them down and they were hitting them. And then they were hitting them with their trucks. And it wasn't necessarily it wasn't our kids, it was the other community use of our property. So, and then they were being vandalized, which we don't have on the lower campus as much as we do up here. Because our parking lot up here is used by a lot of other activities. So to avoid issues in our parking lot, we actually removed a lot of those. So in the handbooks and on the signs on the paperwork that students sign to get the parking permits, the speed limits are all over the place. They all know what the speed limits are. So to avoid another issue that makes it too easy to make certain things targets, that's why we don't have them on this campus. We have them on the other campus because it was a waste of money to have them all beat up and then take them down and then buy new ones, put them up and then take them down.
Okay.
That's
That's
why-
all I wanted to know, because,
My understanding is the
The
very
issue is-
first incident,
Pardon?
my understanding is from the very first incident, when the student was accelerating, he was called into the office and
Yeah, we took care
he was
of it.
disciplined for
Yeah,
it.
he was disciplined for it.
It just wasn't to his satisfaction, that's all.
No, and I know that because we get that constantly. I mean, the woman that was speaking about the book again, that's all been taken care of,
Right.
but it keeps coming back up again. I don't know why, because it's been taken care of. So this has been taken, okay, I just wanted to check.
And she's a homeschool parent. She has no connection to the public school system, public school philosophy, some it's public school, response. Yeah,
Okay.
so
Budget.
it's other business.
Okay, well, anybody else, anything else?
Okay.
Anybody going once, going
Still
twice?
doesn't a sign.
that's good.
We still donate 2 signs when we'd like them.
What about the speed bumps?
Don't do speed bumps with buses.
Oh, my
Oh,
God.
yeah.
I'm not donating one.
I'm not donating that.
No, I was gonna say, I'd donate a sign.
We have executive session.
Yes.
I'll get one
You
from
good?
the alley.
You're good? You're good.
We're good.
Thanks,
We're
Rose.
good. And we.
Have a nice night.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay?
Yeah.
Appreciate that.